Hi, welcome to this session on Polkadot Asset Hub. Especially if you're launching a Parachain on Polkadot, what configuration and integration options are available for you with Polkadot Asset Hub. In this session, we'll take a look at what Asset Hub is, what are the functionalities, especially this is targeted towards the audience who are not from Polkadot ecosystem. The idea is to make you familiar with the terminology used in the context of like Asset Hub and sort of make its functionalities seem intuitive and dive a little bit deeper into its functionalities through some live demos. We'll also do a live demo on permissionless channel setup with Asset Hub. So if you're a Parachain launching on Polkadot, to be able to interact with a chain like Asset Hub, you would need to have a channel established. We'll see how that can be done. And next, we'll take a look at how you can register the assets on your Parachain onto Asset Hub and make them available for interaction with other parachains and so on and so forth. And finally, we'll give a sneak peek into how you can pay fees on Asset Hub using your own tokens, meaning the tokens that were native to the parachain that you're running. And at the end of this session, you have a fair idea about what you could actually do with Asset Hub, what you could do with your Parachain with an Asset Hub integration. Okay, so let's get you familiar with some of the Polkadot terminology. So Asset Hub, along with other chains listed here, is called a system chain because it's part of like Polkadot's network. It's part of Polkadot's system. It doesn't have a governance of its own. All of its network parameters are sort of set by the Polkadot's governance. The role of Asset Hub in Polkadot ecosystem is that it's this open governed chain with functionalities that let you mint fungible assets, fungible tokens, as well as non-fungible tokens like the NFTs. Now let me quickly show you, what Asset Hub looks like and what are the features available at a high level. Let's go to Asset Hub here. All right, so when you go to Asset Hub using like Polkadot.js, you could actually go and check this assets tab. So if you click on it, you see the assets that were minted on Asset Hub. These are like fungible tokens. There are, at the time of recording this video, there are about like over 200 assets here. And as you can see, every asset has its own ID. The supply that is sort of dictated by the one who is like issuing it. Me personally, I have this EduCoin, and I have this ability to mint this EduCoin with like ID 149. If you're the issuer, you should be able to like mint tokens. Let's do this. Yeah, there you go. I just minted some tokens. To be able to do all of this, you would need DOT. There is no native token for Asset Hub. Asset Hub uses like DOT as its native token. So let's see how you can get DOT to Asset Hub, right? So one way to send DOT to Asset Hub is teleporting it from the relay chain. So the way you would do it is you could go to Polkadot network, and here is the teleport option. So you're able to sort of send yourself or to any particular account on Asset Hub DOT from the Polkadot relay chain. Fine. So what else do we have to know about Asset Hub? Yeah, so the existential deposit, the amount of DOT that is required for you to have an account on Asset Hub is 0.01 DOT. This is like 100 times lower than like Polkadot relay chain, which requires you to have at least 1 DOT. So basically the dot you send to Asset Hub, it could be used to pay a transaction fee or to mint assets. So there are over like 1 million accounts on Asset Hub with dot in them. Now there is also this concept of sufficiency. So you have to be familiar with this terminology when dealing with Asset Hub. So there are assets other than dot that could be used as an existential deposit on Asset Hub. A couple of them are USDC and USDT. And again, like this is a decision made by Polkadot OpenGov through Polkadot OpenGov. So it's the dot community that decides which assets could be deemed as sufficient assets on Asset Hub. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that dot holders are over 1 million, and then the total accounts on Asset Hub are slightly higher than the dot holder accounts. The reason for this is that these accounts are having one of these like sufficient assets there. Fine. Now, the other interesting thing I want to mention about like Asset Hub is the presence of this decentralized exchange pools, which are sort of Uniswap V2 style pools. I could open. Let me show them like live to you. Okay, so here we are connected to one of the UIs that lets you take a look at like the pools on Asset Hub. So you can see there are pools with dot token for USDC, USDT, and a bunch of other coins. Now the key functionality for this particular DEX is not to do trading. It's more to facilitate like fee payment in other tokens. So we'll get to this at the end of this session. But one thing you have to understand here is that this is in no way tailored for like trading or other activities you do with DEX. In the Asset Hub pools, one of the assets should always be dot, similar to Kusama Asset Hub as well. So one of the tokens in the pair will always be KSM token, and this is by design choice. All right, so now let's take a look at all the chains that have integrations with Asset Hub already. So you can see we have 30 connected parachains with 59 connected channels, which means almost all of them have bidirectional channels established with like Asset Hub, except like one of them, don't know which one. But the point here being, Asset Hub is like one of the tightly integrated like parachain within Polkadot ecosystem. All right, so now let's say you're launching a parachain on Polkadot. Agile core time is right around the corner. It would let you like purchase like core time to launch your parachains. You could also launch on-demand parachains. So the entry barrier to launch a parachain is going lower. So we're gonna see more and more parachains being launched in Polkadot ecosystem. And those parachains that are launched can make use of like Asset Hub right from the beginning through this integration. So it's easy for the parachains to open channels with Asset Hub now. Previously, this was done through like Polkadot OpenGov. You had to create like a OpenGov referendum to be able to establish this channel, and the community needed to like vote on it. But that's yesterday, and but that's scrapped in favor of this permissionless channel setup. So what you could do is use this particular call, which is called establish channel with system. So this lets you establish channel with like system chains on Polkadot, which I introduced earlier, permissionlessly. And you can't just submit this call on Polkadot relay chain with your account, for instance. It's not possible to do that. This has to be done via a cross-chain call from the parachain itself through the parachain origin, which I'll explain to you shortly through a live demo. All right, so what you need to do for this is, okay, what is the call that you need to execute on Polkadot relay chain? So the channels between parachains. So they are sort of operating via Polkadot relay chain. So the HRMP channel is set up on the relay chain between these parachains. So this call has to be executed on Polkadot relay chain. So let's take a look at what that call is and note down the encoded call, the hex encoded call for that particular channel setup. Okay, so the call here is, so you're going to HRMP palette, and then you are trying to establish channel with system, and the system, the parachain ID of Asset Hub is 1000. So that's what we mentioned here. So that our target system chain's ID is 1000. Now this call has to be sent from the parachain to the Polkadot relay chain for execution. So let's see the steps that we have to go through to do that. So on Parachains, you have this palette called Polkadot XCM. It sort of takes care of sending XCMs on XCM messages on Polkadot. Now the intention here is to not let any random user sort of send this XCM message to establish a HRMP channel. This has to be done through the root origin from the parachain. So the root origin is the origin with the highest privilege. It's almost like, you can think of it as like a pseudo operation that you're doing from the parachain. So this could be either on your account or a multi-sig, or if you decentralized your parachain, it could actually be controlled through governance on your parachain, right? So Polkadot doesn't make any assumptions on how you handle, the internal governance structure of your parachain. So the point being, the root origin, it could be controlled by any of them based on your settings. Fine. So now the other important thing you have to take a note here is that every parachain, once it gets a parachain ID, it sort of has this access to a sovereign account on Polkadot relay chain. Now you may think why a parachain would need this, and this is exactly why it would need it. If the root origin is sort of interacting with Polkadot, well, unless it is configured otherwise, every transaction you make to interact with Polkadot would need usage of network fees. Sometimes some of the transactions require you to put a deposit. So hence, all of the actions performed by the parachain on Polkadot relay chain are executed by deducting transaction fee or taking deposits from this parachain sovereign account. Okay, so there's a way I'll show you how you can find the sovereign account for your parachain. But yeah, you should fund that sovereign account with enough DOT for all of this to sort of get executed. All right, so once we send this XCM message to Polkadot relay chain, first, the XCM execution looks like this. So it withdraws DOT from the parachain sovereign account, buys execution with it, and transacts with the origin kind as native. So this is something I'll show you when constructing the XCM message. You'll have to construct it in this way. So the transaction call, which we noted earlier, so we're going to use this as a transaction call. And finally, after successful execution of this call, you are going to be refunded any sort of surplus. So if you gave a lot more DOT than that was required for execution of this XCM message, that excess DOT is sort of deposited back into your sovereign account. This is the example call that shows you how to establish this permissionless channel with Asset Hub. Now it's time for live demo. So for live demo, we're using an on-demand parachain that we launched on one of the Polkadot testnets. It's called Web3 EduChain. This is developed and maintained by technical education team at Web3 Foundation, which is where I work at. So let's take a look at this on-demand parachain, and then see how we can establish a channel with system chains using this parachain. All right, so now I'm on Educhain. It's an on-demand parachain. Like I mentioned, it produces blocks on demand. For instance, let me show you a little bit on how this on-demand parachain works. So I have a bunch of accounts here. So let me send a transaction from one account to the other. So I'm sending 1000 EDU tokens. Let's sign and submit. Okay, now the transaction I submitted is in the transaction pool. For this particular transaction to be executed, so the Educhain on Rococo, this on-demand parachain should produce a block, right? So that can be enabled through the relay chain. So let's go to Rococo relay chain. Switch here. So I'm going to make a call. So let's do what's called the pallet name is on-demand assignment provider. Okay, so I'm going to place an order for my on-demand parachain to produce a block. So let's say how much I'm willing to pay here. This value is in Planck, so basically I'm willing to give 1 Rococo token for producing this block here, and I have to give my para ID. So I mentioned to you earlier that every parachain has its own unique ID. So 4428 is like Educhain's like ID. So let me submit this transaction. Okay, so once this transaction, it looks like I haven't given it enough price, enough Rococo tokens. So let's do once more. Okay, so this went through, and you see that, we produced a new block. The transfer sort of went through as well. So now I have an account with 1000 EDU tokens here. And you could also do the Network Explorer. So the last block was produced like, then, and then the transfer is sort of like enabled, and the transfer is sort of made, and then I have these tokens here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll go back to the slide, and then I'll copy this example call that I've constructed earlier and show you like how establishing channel with the Rococo Asset Hub looks like. So let me do this. All right, so I mentioned to you this has to be a pseudo call. So we have to send a pseudo call from the parachain. So we are using Polkadot XCM send, so the XCM version location v3. But again, like this is out of the scope of this session. You have to be familiar a little bit about like what XCM is, how do you construct the XCM message. But anyway, so the destination of this XCM message is to the parent. So the parent of this parachain is the Rococo chain, right? So it's the relay chain. So that is where it's going. Yeah, and then with respect to the message, I mentioned, first we withdraw dot tokens. So this XCM message is being executed on Rococo chain, right? So from its perspective, it doesn't have any parents so you're withdrawing like so much fungible tokens, like about 1 Rococo to perform like all of these operations. Okay, so you're buying execution with that particular amount, like 1 Rococo token, and then you're transacting on the Rococo chain. So the reference time and proof size, so these are something that you would be knowing through the benchmarks of that particular call. So I already know them, so I've sort of put them in there. And this was the call that we noted down earlier, right? So this call exactly, so if you take a look at, so to establish HRMP channel with the target system chain, that is the call we have right there. Fine. And in the end, we're refunding like the surplus, which is all fine. And the surplus amount is going back again onto the Parachain 4428. So this is configured to be like the sovereign account on the Rococo chain. All right, so we have everything that we want. Let's submit this. So on my chain, I think we have, okay, so now let's submit this transaction with the Educhain account, which has been configured to be the pseudo account on my Parachain. So I'm going to sign and submit this. Okay, and then I'm going to purchase the block space on Rococo through this on-demand assignment provider for my Parachain, and then let's see what's happening here. Okay, so the pseudo call sort of got executed, and then okay, the pseudo call is executed. The XCM message is sent to like Rococo chain. So let's see if my message, yeah. So basically, I have this Parachain 4428 sending this message to open the HRMP channel, and it is success. So now the Educhain that we have here has a channel with Asset Hub that and let's see like what we can do with this channel, right? So I mentioned to you, establishing channel is the first step, and then we could do a lot more with that particular integration like later on. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. Okay, so the next step, what we're going to do is register the assets on Educhain, like the on-demand Parachain, as a foreign asset on Rococo Asset Hub. Asset Hub on Rococo is a Parachain. So Educhain is a Parachain. It's an on-demand Parachain, but at the end of the day, it's a Parachain. So now the interactions will have to happen between these two, right? So if you're sending an XCM message, earlier to open the XCM channels, we sent the XCM message to the Rococo relay chain because that's where the call had to be executed. But for registering the foreign asset of your Parachain, you need to send the XCM message to the Asset Hub. Fine, so this particular extrinsic exists on Rococo Asset Hub. So let's take a look at that so we're on Rococo mainnet now. Let's go to its Asset Hub. Fine, so let's go to the extrinsics. So here you'll see a bunch of like palettes, and here you have foreign assets palette, right? So it has a call that says create so for creation of a particular foreign asset, you would need to give it like it's multi-location, it's XCM multi-location. So 0 here means it's not foreign asset at all. Like you're actually referring to the Rococo token. But yeah, so if I were to register the native token, the edu token of the Educhain, so I would be writing it this way. So Educhain has its parent like 1, and then it is from the Parachain 4428, right? So who should be administrating like this account, this asset on Asset Hub? on behalf of like the Parachain. So here we have an option. We could actually put like the sovereign account of 4428. Okay, so let's see how we can get the Parachains account that can actually control its activities on Asset Hub, right? So here are Substrate utilities. So this lets you like get the Parachain sovereign account on either Rococo or on Rococo Asset Hub, or any of its like system chains. So let's go to this field which says para ID to address. So here I'm going to add 4428, which is like the para ID of EduChain. Now the child account here, so this would be the sovereign account of my Parachain on Rococo. So Rococo is the relay chain, and this is the child account dedicated for my Parachain on Rococo. But because we are dealing with another Parachain like Rococo Asset Hub, we would need what's called a sibling account. So you could get that here. All right, so that would be your sovereign account on Rococo Asset Hub. So make a note of it. So let's do this and then take a note of this one. Sibling account is so and so. So we're gonna use this. We're gonna use this for minting the foreign asset, as like an administrator. So this way the Parachain can sort of make changes or updates or mint foreign assets on like Rococo Asset Hub. All right, let's go back to Rococo Asset Hub. So what we're trying to do here is register the Parachain 4428. It's like native assets as foreign assets on Rococo Asset Hub, right? So we had to go to foreign assets palette and then try to see this create. Now, so the multi-location for the native token of Parachain 4428, which is the edu token, is this one. And then I'd like to have the sibling account added as the admin here, right? So we want to be able to control this asset, mint it, and even like updating like metadata to it and so on and so forth. All has to be done through the Parachain like sibling account, which is the sovereign account on Rococo Asset Hub. Fine. So we can also give the minimum balance that this has to hold. So now this is in planks. Edu token has like 10 decimals. So you decide how many planks you want in there. So if you want like one edu token, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Fine. So now this is the call that needs to be executed on Rococo Asset Hub via an XCM message that is coming from EduChain, right? So note down this call data. So I'm gonna copy this, and then I'll go to the EduChain here. Okay, so I have to go to the extrinsics. Okay, so here I have to craft an XCM message which uses the call that I just copied in the transact field. So again, like in the interest of time, I already have the XCM message crafted for you. Let me copy that. Let me save it here. Let me copy that from the presentation where I already have the sample call for registering foreign asset via XCM. So let me do this. Okay. Fine. So here, Okay, it's a pseudo call, Polkadot XCM. So we are actually sending this, so you can see the destination is actually the Parachain 1000, which is the asset hub on Rococo. The other instructions, they're very similar to what we did earlier while setting up a channel with asset hub. Basically, the XCM execution looks like this. You withdraw asset, you buy execution, and then here in the transact, you'll have to give the call that needs to be executed, right? So we have noted down the call here. So I'm gonna use this, and I will copy it there. Fine, so we have everything we need. Let's submit the transaction. Cool. And then I'll go to Rococo and then sort of purchase execution. Again, like, you need not do this if your Parachain is using bulk core time or it's connected to the relay chain 24/7. So I'm running an on-demand Parachain. That's why I'm having to purchase like block space to get my transactions executed on my Parachain. Let's go here. And then let's do, and then my para ID is 4428. Submit this transaction. This is done. So the XCM message is successfully sent to the network. So yeah, so Polkadot XCM is sent, and on Rococo we would have received a message. Yep, the queue is processed. Yeah, so we got the Rococo asset hub received the message from the sibling Parachain 4428, and it executed, and then the XCM message is successful, right? So, and a couple of other things that you have to be aware of is that, yes, Asset Hub is configured to get these XCM messages from parachains like Educhain to mint the parachains like assets as foreign assets, etc. But does your parachain have similar kind of XCM configuration? You see, like, so the Educhain which we have currently right now, it's not configured to receive assets from other parachains yet, even though it receives tokens from Rococo, like the ROC tokens. It sort of mints Edu tokens instead, right? So there's some understanding that you should have as the Parachain team on how you need to configure the XCM config file. So there are going to be like tutorials hopefully in this series or on the XCM cookbook that is linked right there on how to use like DOT or Rococo token or KSM on your Parachain if you're launching on any of these relay chains respectively. How do you config this? How do you modify the config to take tokens from other parachains, and then also sending assets from Parachain to other parachains? So all of this configuration options will be made available to you through these documents, and hopefully as tutorials later on in this series. And also I'd like to highlight, I've introduced that Asset Hub can have these pools. So these pools with, let's say you registered your foreign asset and then you created a pool with DOT. Now, from now on, you should be able to pay fees on Asset Hub in your parachains like native token. So as long as these pools are live and then have liquidity, they should be able to facilitate fee payment in your Parachain native token, right? So there are a bunch of examples here that would let you understand like how you go about this. So there's an example for Pallet asset conversion examples. There's an example on how to use this asset transfer API, as well as like a simple script using Polkadot.js to perform the task outlined there. Okay, so this link will let you give feedback on my session as well as the Asset Hub webinars in general. Please provide your feedback for us so that we can improve. Please provide feedback so that we can improve our sessions later on. You have a good day.